The studio lights dimmed, and the nation seemed to lean forward in silence. It wasn't just another political debate. Something about tonight felt different. People in living rooms, bars, and even airport lounges across America were glued to their screens, waiting. The energy was sharp, as if everyone knew, without being told, that history was about to tilt. The host's voice came through first, calm, controlled, the kind of tone used before an explosion. Good evening, America. Tonight, a discussion we can no longer avoid. Joining us live, Senator Adam Schiff and Senator John Kennedy. The camera slowly panned across the stage. 2 podiums, 2 names, 1 burning issue. The topic, Obregon Garcia, a legal immigrant, no criminal record, no known threat, but deported, silently, swiftly, and mysteriously. Adam Schiff was the first to move. He adjusted his mic, looked straight into the lens, and began. Tonight, we must confront something more than just policy. We must confront injustice wrapped in procedure. His voice was calm, but with that sharp edge people had come to expect from him. A trained prosecutor, sharp mind, serious tone, no wasted words. He continued. Mr. Garcia was not given due process. His rights were ignored. This administration has made a habit of turning human lives into political statistics. There were a few nods from the audience, some claps. Schiff was in his zone. Strong, composed, building a case. He didn't mention Trump directly, but everyone knew who he was blaming. Across from him stood John Kennedy, quiet, still, watching. He didn't interrupt. He didn't even flinch, just stood there with a slight smirk, hands folded in front of him. His eyes were on Schiff like a chess player waiting for the exact right moment to strike. The host turned to him. Senator Kennedy, your response. Kennedy leaned forward, clicked on his mic, but didn't speak right away. Instead, he looked at Schiff for a long second, then scanned the crowd. I like Adam, he said finally. His southern drawl cut through the tension like a warm knife. Smart guy, real smart, but sometimes smart people forget that facts don't care about drama. A low murmur moved through the audience. Kennedy continued. Mr. Garcia's story is painful, no question. But let's stop pretending this is only about Trump. This goes back years. Maybe Adam should explain what he signed in 2016 when he chaired the Intelligence Oversight Panel. Schiff's jaw tightened, but he didn't reply. Not yet. The host raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting Senator Schiff was involved in Garcia's original detainment? I'm not suggesting, Kennedy said. I'm asking. The air changed. It was like someone had cracked a window in a burning building. For a split second, even the cameras seemed to zoom in tighter. Schiff didn't blink, but the tension in his shoulders gave him away. This is absurd, Schiff said finally. A distraction. You're trying to rewrite the truth in real time. Kennedy stepped back from the mic, hands in his pockets. Then tell the truth. Did you sign the original authorization memo or not? Schiff didn't answer. The silence was louder than any argument. The crowd felt it. The shift. The realization that something buried, something dangerous was being pulled to the surface. The host tried to regain control. Senator Kennedy, do you have evidence of this memo? Kennedy turned slightly. If I didn't, I wouldn't be standing here. That was all he said. For a moment, no one spoke. No one moved. Even Schiff looked unsure. Less like a prosecutor now, more like someone realizing they were suddenly on trial. Behind the scenes, producers whispered into earpieces, editors prepared emergency segments. The control room watched the ratings spike. In Washington, aides began texting. Phones buzzed in congressional offices. Analysts on live feeds from newsrooms scrambled to shift tone. This wasn't going to be a simple interview anymore. And yet, none of that mattered to the millions of viewers watching. All they saw were 2 men, one holding a mirror, the other deciding whether to break it or walk away. The host cleared his throat. "We'll be back after this short break." But Schiff had already turned off his mic. And Kennedy? He hadn't even broken a sweat. In homes across the country, people were no longer asking about Garcia. They were asking, what does Kennedy know that Schiff doesn't want said out loud? The debate was no longer about one man's deportation. It had become something else, something much bigger. The cameras came back from the break, but everything had changed. The stage was the same, the lights just as bright, the moderator just as composed. But the energy was darker now, heavier. The audience didn't cheer. They waited. Eyes locked on the two men who stood in silence, as if someone had pressed pause on a storm that could explode again at any second. Senator Schiff reached for his mic. He didn't smile. "Let's be clear," he said. "What just happened before the break wasn't a debate. It was an ambush. Senator Kennedy is dragging ghosts from old files, twisting half-truths to paint a false picture. This isn't about me. It's about justice for Obregon Garcia." His voice trembled, just slightly. A small crack in the armor. But it was there. Kennedy didn't attack right away. He stood calmly, blinking slowly like someone waiting for a confession rather than a fight. The moderator turned. "Senator Kennedy, do you want to respond?" Kennedy finally stepped forward, tapping the paper in front of him. "I brought receipts," he said simply. "This memo," he held up a folded piece of government stationery, "isn't classified. It's from 2016. It shows that Schiff, then ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, signed off on an emergency detainment protocol for foreign nationals flagged by a particular surveillance algorithm." He paused, then added, "Garcia's name was flagged under that program." Gasps. One or two people in the crowd actually stood up, not in protest, but in shock. Even the moderator leaned forward, unsure whether to interrupt or let it play out. Schiff shook his head. "You're oversimplifying," he snapped. That protocol was designed for national security threats, not innocent men like Garcia. If his name was flagged, it was an error, and it wasn't acted on until years later, under Trump. "But you created the net," Kennedy said, calm and quiet. "And now you want to blame the fish for getting caught in it." The moderator tried to step in. "Senator Schiff, do you deny signing that memo?" "I don't deny protocol," Schiff said tightly. "I deny its abuse." Kennedy leaned in, just slightly. "Then name the names. Who else signed off? Who kept the file active after you left?" There it was, a deeper trap. Schiff had walked straight into it. For a second he looked like he might answer, but instead he leaned back and crossed his arms. Silence again. Behind the scenes, in the green room, a woman named Sabrina Malik watched it all unfold. She wasn't a politician or a staffer. She was a journalist, independent, fierce, and she had history with both men. She stared at the screen, lips tight. The name Garcia meant something to her too. She'd heard it before, years ago, while embedded with an NGO in Sao Paulo, Brazil. A quiet warning from a source who disappeared days later. Now the story was resurfacing, on national TV, with fire. Sabrina grabbed her bag and slipped out the door. She wasn't staying to watch. She had work to do. Back on stage, the moderator turned to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to take a moment to recenter. This conversation has taken a turn we didn't expect, and it's important we get clarity before moving forward." But the crowd was already buzzing. No one was listening. Phones lit up. Clips were already being shared, dissected, translated into hashtags. Schiff memo, Kennedy bombshell, Garcia gate. Kennedy adjusted his mic again. "I'm not here to throw dirt," he said. "But if you're going to accuse others of abusing power, You better clean up your own backyard first." Schiff opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes weren't angry now, they were calculating. He knew this wasn't just a PR hit anymore. It was a setup, and maybe the worst part, it was working. The moderator looked into the camera. "We'll continue after a short statement from both senators, but tonight, it's clear this isn't just about one man's deportation. It's about responsibility, across years, across parties." The screen faded to commercial, and somewhere across the city, in a quiet office lit by old case files and half-drunk coffee, Sabrina opened her laptop and typed the name, Obregon Garcia. Internal memo, 2016. Flagged under Vanguard Protocol. She stared at the screen. Then, whispered to herself, who signed the order? And who gave the name? The game had just begun. The commercial break ended, but the calm never returned. The camera returned to the stage with a slow, steady zoom. The crowd had fallen into an odd silence, tense, confused, curious. They weren't watching a political debate anymore. They were watching something unravel, something hidden. And the man at the center of it, Adam Schiff, was no longer just defending a case. He was defending himself. Senator John Kennedy, still collected, took a slow sip of water. He knew the silence was working in his favor. Silence forced everyone to listen, and right now, the entire country was listening. The moderator looked between them and cleared his throat. "Senator Schiff, before we went to break, Senator Kennedy introduced a memo from 2016, suggesting you authorized a program that later flagged Mr. Garcia for deportation. Do you deny signing it?" Schiff didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to Kennedy, staring at him for a beat too long. Then he slowly stepped to his mic. "That document is real," he said. "But it's being misrepresented. The Vanguard Protocol was a bipartisan emergency measure to protect against international cyber threats. Mr. Garcia's name was never supposed to be part of that system. He was a legal resident, a teacher, a husband. Someone inserted his name for reasons that had nothing to do with national security." Kennedy tilted his head. "That's a serious accusation. Are you saying his name was planted?" "I'm saying," Schiff said, eyes narrowing, "that Mr. Garcia was used as bait for a political trap." A quiet gasp rippled through the room. The moderator blinked. "Used by whom?" Schiff didn't speak, but the implication was loud. In the background, Sabrina Malik was now inside the parking garage of a federal archive building. Her press badge got her access to the lower levels. She moved with a journalist's practiced caution. Fast, alert, but never panicked. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message. "They're finally saying his name, but they're still lying." No sender, just a burner number. She frowned and typed back. Then who's protecting the real story? She knew she was getting close. Too close. But she also knew Garcia's case had more than one ghost attached to it. And she'd heard whispers before about a data-sharing program quietly approved during a moment of national panic. A program both parties had supported but no one wanted to claim. Back on stage, Kennedy stepped forward again. His tone shifted, colder, now. "So let me get this straight," he said. "You signed the framework. A man got deported because of it. But now you're saying someone manipulated it, and you don't know who." Schiff nodded once. "I know who, but I can't prove it yet." That was enough. The audience murmured again. Someone in the front row even asked, "Then why are you here?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. The moderator pressed on. "Senator Schiff, are you saying there was internal sabotage within your own party?" Schiff looked into the camera, direct, controlled. "I'm saying there were people who wanted Garcia gone, and they knew how to exploit a system I helped design. That's on me. But the real crime is who used it, and why." Kennedy didn't flinch. Name them. Schiff smiled. It wasn't friendly, it was grim. Not yet. And just like that, the game changed again. In her car outside the archive building, Sabrina opened a new file on her laptop. It was an old classified draft someone had leaked to her 3 years ago, marked Vanguard Protocol, Executive Scope Expansion. The first 3 signatures were blurred out, but the fourth, clear as day. Senator J. Kennedy. She stared at it, heart pounding. It wasn't just Schiff who helped build the system. Kennedy was part of it too. And now, only one question mattered. Who was trying to bury the truth first? Inside the studio, Schiff and Kennedy stood like statues. Both knew what the other now understood. This wasn't about Garcia. This was about the machinery they'd both helped build. Only now, it was spinning out of control. And the whole world was watching. The lights above the stage buzzed faintly, a subtle hum that no one seemed to notice. But beneath that noise, something more unsettling had begun. Doubt. The audience wasn't cheering or gasping anymore. They were thinking, whispering, watching every breath each senator took. They weren't seeing political opponents. They were seeing 2 men entangled in something much deeper than party lines. Senator Kennedy, no longer smiling, adjusted his posture. He knew what was coming. Schiff had set the board, and now it was his move. "Let me ask you a simple question," Kennedy said, voice smooth, but firm. "If you say you know who manipulated that protocol, why haven't you launched a full investigation?" Schiff didn't blink. "Because the people responsible are still inside the system. Whistleblowers disappear, witnesses vanish. There's a wall of silence in this city, Senator, and you know it." A pause. A long one. Kennedy didn't respond right away. Instead, he turned to the audience. "We're supposed to be here debating the deportation of one man, Mr. Obregon Garcia. But what we're really dealing with, according to my colleague, is a national conspiracy." He looked back at Schiff. "Well, if that's true, then we're all in danger." The moderator raised a hand, trying to guide the conversation. "Senator Kennedy, are you saying you had no knowledge of Vanguard Protocol's expansion?" Kennedy's jaw twitched. "I signed onto a cyber defense framework. It was never meant for immigration enforcement." "But it was used for it." Schiff interjected quickly. "And you kept quiet when it did." Kennedy leaned in slightly. "I didn't authorize cross-agency implementation." "Neither did I," Schiff snapped. "But someone did. Someone higher." The moderator looked between them, his hands now gripping the desk. "Are you suggesting this goes above Congress?" Both men paused. Then, together, almost in unison, they said, "Yes." The air left the room. For the first time all night, the audience wasn't divided by politics. They were united by fear. Outside the studio, Sabrina Malik's phone vibrated again. A second message, this time with a file attached. "You missed one signature. Look closely." She opened the image. Her eyes scanned the scanned document from 3 years ago. Vanguard Protocol, Executive Scope. Her heart stopped. There, in faded blue ink, a 5th signature. Vice President Harold Strickland. She whispered the name aloud, like it might trigger a memory. Strickland, now acting president after the former commander-in-chief's abrupt resignation. A man known for his calm demeanor, his diplomatic strategy, and his near-total silence on immigration. He had always remained above the noise, neutral, unthreatened. But now he was implicated. And if this file was real, he wasn't just aware of the program. He helped expand it. Sabrina copied the document onto a flash drive, slipped it into her coat, and started the car. The media wouldn't touch this yet. Too volatile. But she would. Back inside the studio, the moderator was struggling to contain the show. "Gentlemen, I must remind you that any accusation against sitting government officials must be backed by evidence." Kennedy didn't flinch. "Evidence is coming." Schiff leaned in. "It's already here." The moderator blinked. "What do you mean?" Schiff reached into his suit pocket and held up a sealed envelope. "In this are 2 names. One is a mid-level analyst at DHS who was fired and silenced. The other is a data security contractor who leaked proof of the cross-agency misuse. I'm submitting both for independent review, tonight, live." Gasps echoed. Kennedy's face tightened. "You're playing with fire." Schiff's reply came sharp. "No, I'm just done pretending it isn't burning." The moderator turned to the camera, clearly rattled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is unprecedented. We've gone far beyond policy debate. What's being suggested tonight could, if proven true, shake the highest levels of this country's leadership." The cameras cut to commercial. But in that silence, something shifted. This wasn't about Garcia anymore. This was about control. And both men on that stage knew, whatever came next, they couldn't stop it now. Not without burning everything down. The commercial ended, but the tension only deepened. The camera swept across the audience. No one moved. No one whispered. It was as if the entire room had turned to stone, suspended in a single breathless moment. The broadcast had begun as a political discussion, but now it felt like a live investigation, unraveling in real time. Senator Schiff remained still, his hand resting lightly on the sealed envelope he had just placed on the podium. Senator Kennedy stood across from him, arms folded, face unreadable. The moderator sat back in his chair, voice quieter now. Less controlled anchor, more stunned witness. "We are witnessing history unfold tonight," he said. "For those just tuning in, Senator Schiff has submitted the names of 2 whistleblowers tied to what both senators now describe as a dangerous misuse of a classified surveillance program, one they both helped authorize. A beat. And a signature belonging to then Vice President Strickland has now reportedly surfaced as part of this controversy." The nation held its breath. Senator Kennedy finally stepped forward. "I've served this country long enough to know when something's broken, and I'll admit, I trusted a system that's now out of control. But I also know what it means when a man hands over classified names live on air." His gaze cut to Schiff. "You're not doing this to protect anyone. You're doing it because you're trapped." Schiff didn't respond. His face was still, unreadable. Kennedy continued. "You didn't want to say the vice president's name. Not because you're afraid, but because if it's true, then everything you built, everything we built, falls apart." Schiff looked at him, slowly. "Maybe it should." That sentence landed like a thunderclap. Across the country, millions of viewers sat frozen. In homes, bars, offices, and phones clutched tightly in hands, people leaned closer. Not just to hear, but to understand. In a news van just outside the studio, Sabrina Malik sat hunched over her laptop, the signed document glowing on the screen. The file had metadata, a creation date, an edit trail. It was real, but something still didn't fit. A call came through, her headset. It was her editor at the network. "Malik, I just got off the phone with legal. We run that document, and we'll be hit with every injunction in the book." "I'm not asking," she said flatly. "I'm running it anyway. If they want to bury this, they'll have to do it live." She ended the call and sent the file to the satellite feed technician. Back on stage, the moderator received a cue in his earpiece. His face went pale. "Ladies and gentlemen, breaking news. A leaked classified document has just been published by independent reporter Sabrina Malik. It includes a 5th signature on the Vanguard Protocol expansion, belonging to now President Harold Strickland." A sharp exhale cut through the audience. Kennedy's eyes widened. Schiff stayed still, as if he already knew this part was coming. The moderator's voice cracked slightly. This document confirms that the protocol was approved for use beyond cyber terrorism. It includes a clause for domestic flagging of behavioral anomalies. The words hung in the air. Behavioral anomalies. A phrase broad enough to include anyone. The cameras zoomed in. Schiff's voice returned, low, almost resigned. That clause was inserted without congressional oversight. It turned Vanguard from a firewall into a weapon. A tool for cleansing. Mr. Garcia was just one of the first victims. Kennedy stepped forward again, shaking his head. Strickland was supposed to be the adult in the room. He played peacemaker, while quietly authorizing a surveillance dragnet. That would make Hoover proud. Schiff nodded. And we handed him the pen. The moderator tried to regain control, but the story was out now. There was no wrapping it in neat headlines. No bringing it back to a safe place. One of the producers behind the camera waved frantically. To the moderator. Another update. He spoke again, voice shaking now. We're receiving word that the White House press office has canceled tomorrow's briefing. No reason given. No statement from President Strickland. Kennedy's voice dropped to a growl. He's running. Schiff spoke clearly, deliberately. Or planning something worse. There was a silence deeper than before. Not fear. Not shock. Reckoning. Sabrina Malik watched it all unfold from her van, heart pounding. The anchor was right. This wasn't just a policy dispute. This was an exposed nerve in the nation's spine. And the knife had already gone in. She knew the next hours would change everything. The press, the presidency, and the fate of every man and woman flagged by Vanguard. The camera panned one final time between the two senators. And then, to everyone's surprise, Schiff extended his hand to Kennedy. Kennedy hesitated, then took it. Because for the first time, the enemy wasn't each other. It was the system both of them had helped create. The handshake between Schiff and Kennedy wasn't planned. It wasn't rehearsed for optics. It came from somewhere deeper, a realization, sharp and undeniable, that the battle had outgrown them, both. For a few seconds, the auditorium stood in stunned silence. The stage lights reflected off their clasped hands, capturing the moment like a freeze frame in history. Across the nation, newsrooms went wild, scrambling to cut into regular programming. Every major outlet flashed the same words across the screen: Senators unite after live revelation of presidential abuse of power. But behind the scenes, chaos had already begun to spread. In the White House communications office, aides barked orders, phones rang non-stop, and security protocols shifted into lockdown mode. Acting President Strickland had vanished, at least publicly. No statement, no press appearance, not even a cryptic tweet. His silence was louder than anything he could have said. Inside the studio, the moderator took a deep breath, trying to regain composure. Senators, what do you want the American people to understand about what's just happened? Schiff didn't speak first. Kennedy did. We're not here to argue anymore, he said, his southern drawl steady, stripped of political performance. We're here to pull back the curtain, and when we did, what we found behind it wasn't just corruption. It was strategy. Years of it. He turned to the audience. This wasn't one mistake. This was a machine built to outlive its creators. Schiff followed, quieter but equally sharp. We spent too long pointing fingers at each other while the real architects moved in silence. The program was designed to outmaneuver laws, to disguise targeting as protection. And we were given just enough access to feel like we had control. The moderator looked confused. You're saying even as senators you were manipulated? Schiff nodded. We thought we were the chess players, but we were pawns. The audience murmured again. No longer skeptical, but fearful. Suddenly, the lights in the studio flickered. The broadcast feed cut for half a second, then returned. The moderator pressed his earpiece. Apologies for the disruption. We're being told we had a brief technical interruption from the uplink, but Schiff was already turning toward a nearby producer. Check the backup lines. That wasn't a glitch. Kennedy's eyes narrowed. Someone doesn't want this going further. In the news van outside, Sabrina Malik stared at a blank screen. The live feed had stopped on her monitor. Then her phone lit up with a notification. Signal jam detected. Broadcast suspended. She knew exactly what that meant. This wasn't just about political fallout anymore. Someone, somewhere, had triggered a failsafe. A digital kill switch. Back in the studio, the moderator was clearly shaken. We're still live, but our team is working to secure the transmission. Senators, until then, what happens next? Schiff leaned into the mic. We push forward. We release the documents. All of them. Kennedy nodded. We open every file, subpoena every architect, and we do it before someone else decides to shut this all down the hard way. At that moment, a low beep echoed in the studio. Not from the cameras, from Kennedy's phone. He pulled it from his jacket pocket, glanced at the screen, then went pale. He held it up to Schiff. A simple message. The next leak is yours, and we're watching. The audience didn't see it, but Schiff did, and he understood exactly what it meant. Someone had turned the spotlight on them. The system they had helped expose wasn't panicking. It was recalculating. It had protocols for damage control, for counter-narratives, for media manipulation. But when none of those worked, it turned to threats. The moderator ended the show early, citing technical difficulties. The audience was ushered out quickly, their phones scanned by security before they could post what they had seen. Schiff and Kennedy were taken to separate exits, each now accompanied by armed security, not just for show, but for protection. As they left, neither man spoke, but they both knew. The storm had only begun, and what came next wouldn't be on live TV. It would be in dark rooms, locked offices, encrypted channels, where the real power played, where truth was dangerous, and where the final battle for control had just been declared. Outside the studio, Washington didn't sleep. By midnight, the Capitol building was surrounded by unmarked black SUVs. Anonymous sources began leaking fragments of classified memos to journalists, too fast for the networks to verify. The internet, flooded with speculation. Was the president missing or hiding? Inside a dimly lit intelligence subcommittee room, Schiff sat across from Kennedy again. But this time, no cameras, no audience. Just a circle of aides, legal counsel, and 2 military advisors watching every word, every expression. The air was thick with unspoken truth. Kennedy broke the silence. You think he'll surface? Schiff looked tired. More than tired. Hunted. No, he said. Not until the next phase starts. A military aide leaned forward. Sir, you should both know. NORAD elevated to DEFCON 3 30 minutes ago. Not public yet, but the chain's active. A cyber alert was triggered on our East Coast satellite grid. Someone's trying to wipe the Vanguard servers. Kennedy cursed under his breath. They're cleaning house. And trying to frame us while they do it, Schiff added. One of the younger aides pulled up a feed from an encrypted channel. A chilling message had started circulating. An official-looking memo with Kennedy and Schiff's names in the subject line. Breach of national security protocol. Internal subversion suspected. It wasn't just a threat anymore. They were being made into suspects. The system was now trying to turn its whistleblowers into enemies of the state. Across town, Sabrina Malik sat alone in her hotel room, the glow of 3 monitors illuminating her face. She watched everything. The feeds, the chatter, the pattern of false leaks. She realized this wasn't a scramble. It was a script. The system had rehearsed this. Pre-planned denials, pre-written character assassinations, a plan to flip the truth upside down. She leaned toward her microphone and hit record. This is Sabrina Malik. If you're hearing this, You've already seen the narrative collapsing. This isn't politics. This is architecture. It was designed, tested, and turned loose. But tonight, it made one mistake. It forgot that people still see. And now, we're going to show the world what they were never supposed to see. She uploaded the final file, the complete Vanguard expansion document, time-stamped and signed, by all 5 names, including Strickland. Within seconds, it went viral. The people finally had the unfiltered truth in their hands. Back in the subcommittee room, Schiff's secure phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and for the first time all day, he smiled. "It's out," he said. She did it. Kennedy leaned back, exhaling slowly. Then we just bought the country a chance. Not a win, Schiff said. Just a chance. A Marine stepped inside. "Gentlemen, you've been requested at Langley. Emergency national briefing. You're being escorted under silent protocol. They've activated Operation Lantern." The room went still. Operation Lantern hadn't been mentioned in years. It was created for one reason only: continuity of constitutional authority in the event of political collapse. Kennedy looked at Schiff. "This isn't a cleanup. It's a reset." They stood. Outside, a motorcade waited in the pouring rain, the kind of night where history hides in shadows, where decisions are made not in the public eye, but behind reinforced walls and guarded gates. But this time, things were different. The people were watching, and they were awake. In cities across America, protests began to swell. Not left, not right. Just people demanding transparency. Parents, veterans, teachers, students. For the first time in decades, the outrage wasn't divided. It was singular, focused, burning. Inside Langley, as they entered the classified briefing chamber, Kennedy turned to Schiff with a quiet smirk. "Tell me something." "What?" "Back on that stage, did you know it'd go this far?" Schiff shook his head. "I knew it had to." They stepped into the secured room, where generals, judges, and silent operatives stood waiting. The door closed behind them with a hiss. And just like that, the last chapter of the old system began to end. Not with applause, but with reckoning. And outside, in a stormlit country watching through phones and whispers, a new chapter waited to be written.